shall rise, and the glory of his resurrection share. When the saved of earth shall gather to the
Lord, to love one another more, and help us to fill the needs of others if we can. Lord, now we'd ask you to go with us through the remainder of this service. Lead, guide, and direct us in everything that we say and do. For it's in your most precious and holy name that we ask this. Amen.
Kids are getting all squished when they sit down. It's a good sign. I'd like to welcome you, and if you just wonder, what Brother Ritter's done over the last 50 years, you can just look around and really see, can't you? And listening over the memories, and we appreciate it. I've only been a part of it for 10 years, so small. I don't know about 50, but I might get there. But what a mark to set, so we appreciate him, and glad you could come today to celebrate that with us. We had 81 in Sunday school this morning, so a good day that he can remember having the Sunday school rooms filled up. I'd like to invite you next week. If you're living close or able to join us for Sunday school at 10 o'clock next week, we'd love to have you. Just a lot of things going on and a lot of things that are happening. We just appreciate everybody being here this morning.
On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross.
In the old rugged cross. my Savior. Face to face, what will it be? When the rapture I behold him, Jesus Christ, who died for me. Only faintly now I see him, with the darkened veil between. But a blessed day is coming, when his glory shall be seen. Face to face I shall behold him, far beyond the starry sky. Face to face in all his glory, I shall see him by and by. What rejoicing in his presence, when we're banished grief and pain, when the crooked ways are straightened, and the dark things shall be plain. Face to face, oh blissful moment, face to see and know, face to face with my Redeemer, Jesus Christ, who loves me so. Face to face I shall behold him, far beyond the starry sky. Face to face in all his glory, I shall see him by and by.
Good to see you. Thank you for being here today. We certainly welcome you. Let me echo what Cecil said. You don't have a church home or you're not attending, we sure invite you to come back anytime that you can. It's always delightful to come to the Lord's house and to worship him. But we're sure glad you're here today. Good bunch. Good bunch. Maybe we better take an offering. I need some help doing this. Philip, you and Cecil help me, will you? Y'all are both strong. You can carry a lot. Deacon Philip, lead us, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, God, just thank this day. God, just thank you for a great day together in your house, God. First of all, to worship a worthy God. And Lord, then just to say thanks to a faithful servant of yours for 50 years here at Union Valley Baptist Church. Lord, we love him, we love his family, and thank you for the time you've given him to us, and we look forward to more. God, just be with us as we take up this offering, God. May we remember that it's not for this church. It's not because you need money. God, it's just that you want to know that your people are faithful and that we care about getting the word of Jesus Christ out to a dying world. So God, just bless this offering and use it to your glory. And we say, pray in Christ's name. Amen.
just looking around, I don't think there's anybody here I don't know. And I want to tell you something, just as an observation. Some of you have gotten older. And I think I may be the only one here that hasn't changed. Anyway, we're glad you're here. Lord bless you.
While my sister's coming up here, I'm going to say a little bit. We're going to sing the song Thank You for Brother Ritter, and I think it's pretty appropriate. Me and my dad were just talking about how although Brother Ritter wasn't instrumental in my salvation, he was influential because when he was my age, 19 years old, he baptized Carol Thaddy right here in this church. And many of you know that's our grand, and without our grandparents on both sides of, who knows where we're going to be today. So we'd like to say thank you to Brother Arbuary for everything he's done, welcoming us as a family into this church, and so thank you.
And I know up in heaven, you're not supposed to cry, but I am almost sure There were tears in your eyes as Jesus took your hand and you stood before the Lord. He said, my child, look around you. Great is your reward. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Oh, thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. I am so glad you gave.
Let's stand and let's sing Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. It's one of the first songs that we did before we preached. We're going to do it this morning. Turn it off. What a fellowship, what a joy, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning.
He looked at that and he said, boy, this is great. He said, how much does it cost to eat here? He said, it's heaven. Remember, it's free. It doesn't cost anything. And he said, let me show you this. And he walked out back of the house and he said, there was this beautiful golf course. And he said, before you ask, it doesn't cost anything to play on this golf course. This is heaven. The guy looked at his wife and he said, you and your confound bran muffins. If it hadn't been for that, I'd have been here 10 years sooner. And, you know, that's really true. And the truth is, you know, in our little lives, we have to think about two worlds. We commit spiritual suicide if we just think of this one world, folks. And if we live our lives and we don't think anything about the world that's to come, and it will, every sensible man, I think, knows that there's something beyond this life. And I say that, you know because that God is real. You have to. When you just look at yourself and you think about the intricacies of the human body, you think about how this all works and operates to perfection. You look at the universe and you think about how we're placed, how the earth is tilted, how far we are from the sun and the moon, and if we were any closer to the sun, we'd burn up. If we were farther away, we'd freeze. It's all in God's supreme engineering plan. And you have to recognize, you put your hand over your heart and you think about what it does, it has to tell you God is real. There's something behind all this. There is a great mind in the universe. You know, you look back at societies in the past and you consider what history would tell us. You look at, the carvings on the walls of caves, ancient hieroglyphics. When finally that was deciphered, they found out it was instructions about the life hereafter. Ancient man. You look at the ancient Gallic warrior. He was interred with his armor. The old Indian talked about going to the happy hunting grounds after this life. Cicero. Cicero did a very exhaustive study about death. And he reached this conclusion. He said, there must be life after death because of the consensus of the people. People believe in something beyond this life. I think common sense just tells us that the end is not in the casket, that there is something beyond the graveyard. I stumbled across something several years ago, and I made a copy of it, and it talks about 3 monkeys. I've thought about this so much, I probably already know what it is if I can't find it here. The 3 monkeys sat in a coconut tree discussing things as they're said to be. Now, said one to the other two, there's a certain rumor going around that man descended. But you won't find a mother monk that'll leave her babies with others to bunk. And he went ahead and he said, now listen, you two. He said, if I built a fence around this coconut tree, starvation would force you to steal from me. But he said, yeah, man might have descended yonder cuss, but brother, he didn't descend from us. And I've thought of that a lot of times, and I think there's a great deal of truth in that. But we know that there's a lot of heartache and there's a lot of suffering in this world, and we're told that there's a land where that isn't true. Sorrows gather around us. Everybody here, you look to the guy to your left, and he's got some problems. Not everything's real good. Look to the guy to your right, look behind you, look ahead of you. We've all got some heartaches. We've all got some problems. If we hadn't, it's in our family. There's things that come along in life that hurt us. But there's a land and a promise of a place where that isn't true, where the sorrow will not come to our hearts. I think about Dr. Criswell. W.A. Criswell was pastor many years of the First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. And he told about being on an airplane, and there was a noted seminary professor, a theologian, who was also on that same flight. And he sat beside him on the plane. And he said he was really interested in talking to him. And he said in the process of the conversation, this seminary professor told him, said, Dr. Criswell, I recently lost my little boy through death. And Dr. Criswell said, I listened as he told the story. He said the little boy came home from school one day with a fever, and he thought it was just one of those childhood things. But he said it was the most virulent kind of meningitis. And he said after 2 or 3 days, the doctor told him, said, we cannot save your little boy. He's going to die. So this seminary professor, loving his son as he did, sat by his son's bed in a death vigil. And it was the middle of the day. The little boy whose strength was going from him was vision. His brain was getting clouded. And the little boy, he said, looked at me and he said, "Daddy, it's getting dark, isn't it?" And he said, "Yes, son, it's getting dark, very dark." And he said, of course, it was dark for him. And he said, "Well, Daddy, I guess it's time for me to go to sleep, isn't it?" And he said, "Yes, son, it's time for you to go to sleep." And the professor said the little boy had a way of kind of fixing his pillow and putting his hands on him. And he fixed his pillow and laid his hands down, head down on his hands, and he said, "Good night, Daddy. I'll see you in the morning." He said, Dr. Criswell, he closed his eyes then and went into heaven. Dr. Criswell said that the professor didn't say anything else. He just kind of turned his head and looked out the airplane window. Was silent for a long time. And then he said that he finally looked back. He said there was tears running down his cheeks. And he said, "Dr. Criswell, I can hardly wait till the morning." You know what, folks? We have got hope that can only be found in the Lord Jesus Christ. The greatest physicians in the world cannot keep themselves or their families alive. We've got so many marvelous medical procedures and things, but we still cannot defeat death. But Jesus did. And we've got hope in Him. And in this life, there's hope. And it can only be found in Him, not in our goodness or anything else. I think about W.T. Wagner. You know, living as close as we do down around Electra and Vernon, Wagner Ranch is 535,000 acres. And in the early 1900s, W.T. Wagner had some problem with water for his stock. Some of it had oily stuff on it and things like that. And it ended up that he made several wells trying to get stock water and kept having this problem. And he ended up, in the early 1900s, leasing 250,000 acres of his land to Texaco. And they, of course, made all kinds of oil wells out of it. And the Wagner Ranch, with that 535,000 acres, what will get you into heaven? One time there was a Sunday school teacher that said, if I sold my house and my car, and I had a big garage sale, and I gave all that money to the church, would that get me into heaven? And she asked the children in the Sunday school class that, and one of the kids said, no, that won't do it. If I cleaned the church every day, if I mowed the yard and kept everything neat and tidy, would that get me into heaven? And the answer again was no. Well then, if I was kind to animals, and I gave candy to kids, and I loved my wife, would that get me into heaven? She asked again. They all answered, no. Well, she said, what will get me into heaven? And there was a little 5-year-old boy there, and he shouted out, and he said, you got to be dead. And I think that's probably true. You know, as I think about death hurts, and it comes into all of our lives and experiences. I was talking to Tim the other day. You know, he was in the Navy, and then he ended up being in the Oklahoma Air National Guard as a flight nurse. He and Karen lived in Burke Burnett, and they came to church here. 1990, Desert Storm broke out. And one Sunday, right after church in the morning, he called me and he said, "Dad, could you take me to Oklahoma City? I've got some orders." And that was in August of 1990. Wasn't very much in the paper about things. Saddam, who had made a sachet into Kuwait, and Karen had, Stephanie was 3 or 4 years old, Mark was a couple of years old, and little babies, and he said, I don't want Karen taking me, I want you to take me. I said, okay. And he said, I have to be up there at midnight. So we had church, we headed to Oklahoma City. We went to the base up there, and you know, it was dark, no lights. Get out there and there was a C-130 airplane waiting on. There was 5 of these guys. Like I say, he was a flight nurse, and I, not being real savvy about a lot of military things, I didn't really know what was happening, and I don't know whether he knew or he wasn't at liberty to say or whatever. He was like a lieutenant or something, and first lieutenant at that time. And so I took him up there and didn't know where he's going. War was about to break out, come to find out. And you think about it, when you're going to have yourself a war, you got to have some place to take people that are wounded. You've got to have doctors. You've got to have stations to take care of people. And military intelligence does that kind of thing. So as it turned out, that's kind of what he was doing. And he went to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And so the very first guys, I guess, to go to Desert Storm and war. Now, I want to tell you something. When you're a daddy and you stand there and you watch your oldest son get on an airplane going to a war, that's pretty hard on your heart. And you know, I don't know I ever felt that way in my whole life. And you know, it was a pretty hard time for the family. And I don't know, he wasn't gone all that long. You know, that was one of our shorter wars. But I want to tell you something. It sure was a different deal when he came back home. You know, Karen, the kids, all of us, we're up at the airport and we're waiting for his homecoming. Oh, he looked great when he got off that airplane. And I think about sometimes, you know, we cry and we hold the hands of our loved ones and they leave us. But can you imagine on the other side what it must be like? Can you imagine heaven's reunions? How wonderful, how marvelous. I've visited with several people who came in here today and they were saying, who are these people? I don't know them. Church has changed. But you know what? We've had a lot of people who've been sitting right there where you are that are gone now. And I think about that, and I think about what it must be like in heaven. Can you just imagine the reunions that will take place in glory? Awesome. He's real. And the wonderful thing is that He loves you and He cares about you. Heaven's a place, a wonderful place. There'll be a lot of people there. It's a permanent place. It's a place of perfect residence. And you know, there's a lot that I don't understand, but it's a pretty good place to make an investment, I'm here to tell you. You know, there was a time when I didn't have any interest at all in Clarksville, Indiana. Just didn't mean a thing to me. And he talked Karen into marrying him. I'm talking about Tim again. He talked Karen into marrying him. They lived here about 10 or 12 years, and then they moved back to her home at Clarksville. You know what? I got a great grandson there now, and I've got 2 grandkids there. And you know, I got a lot more interest in what happens in Clarksville, Indiana than I ever had before. And that's the way I feel about heaven. I've got a lot of loved ones and friends that have gone on to glory. And I got a lot more interest in heaven as I get a little closer myself to what happens in heaven itself. It's a wonderful thing. I'm reminded of the missionary who had gone to Africa and served the Lord there and spent his whole life serving the Lord. Lost his wife and his family to some fevers. Got time to come home. Got on a ship. And Teddy Roosevelt was the president of the United States. And he had been to Africa on a big game hunt. Happened to be on this same ship headed back to the United States. And when he came along, they got to New York City, and here was a band, lots of dignitaries there to welcome the president home. They rolled out the red carpet, welcomed Teddy Roosevelt home. Wasn't a single person there to meet the missionary. Before he was going to get a train and head to his home, he got a little hotel room. And he got to thinking about that. And he said, Lord, here I am. I've given my life serving you in Africa. I left my wife and my children buried there. There wasn't anybody to welcome me. Here's a man that was down there hunting animals, and all these people were there. And they were welcoming him home. And he said, Lord, I don't understand it. But he said, then, you know what? The Lord kind of spoke to me. And he said, but my son, folks, know where you're going. You can't get there by yourself. You'll have to have Jesus and what he did on the cross. None of us are good enough to earn heaven. Not a single one of us. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us the best we can come up with is like filthy rags in God's sight. I tell you this morning, the Lord loves you. And I hope you know him as your Lord and Savior. I know most of you do. But maybe there's one person here. You're not sure if your heart quit beating today where you'd go. Listen, you can know. Jesus is the answer. Simple as it is, you just have to turn around from yourself and trust him. We're going to sing him an invitation for that reason. Maybe 435, just as I am. And that's the only way you can come to the Lord. And I would invite you to the cross today if you've never received. Maybe you would best serve the Lord here in this church. We open our doors the way you receive members. Whatever the Lord might speak to your heart, as Sean leads us, just as I am, we invite you to come.
Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou wouldst bring from to thee, O Lamb of God, I come, just as I am and waiting not to rid my soul of one dark thought, to thee whose blood can cleanse each spot, O Lamb of God, I come,
We are going to be at home with you. Father, with all the trouble, the sorrow, questions that go unanswered here on earth, Father, that we'll just be with you at home in glory for that place that you prepared for us. Lord, we thank you, though, for the opportunity to live here. Father, as Brother Ritter's right, the purpose of this church, Father, is to guide people to heaven, is to go out and to proclaim the name of Jesus. And so, Lord, I pray that as we remember, Father, where our home is, that it's not here on earth, and it's not the things here on earth, but when we leave this place today, that we'll honor you and what you've done for us. Father, we'll be inspired by Brother Ritter and the years of service that he's given. Father, that we'll go out and we'll have to have the same mind to draw people to Jesus, because, Father, that's what this life is all about. So we thank you so much for what you've done for us. We thank you that you're waiting there to call us home. Father, that you have so much more for us to do here on earth. So I pray we'll go and fulfill that. In your name we pray. Amen.
This way.
You're awful shiny today. I'll hug you if I could. Consider yourself hugged. Consider yourself hugged. Okay.
Hello. How you doing? Well.
I'm trying to stay on camera. I love her. Get out of your way.
What? I'll get out of your way.
school for the purpose of establishing a church. Reverend J.B. Howard was instrumental in calling this meeting. 12 members of the Randolette Baptist Church, Mr. and Miss J.O. Welch, Mr. and Miss Louis Welch, Lorraine Welch, Miss Ella Powers, Mr. Jess Cornelius, Jewel Cornelius, Mr. and Miss J.E. Whitehead, Mr. and Miss C.N. Watts, and Mr. Hollis Powers, a member of the Chattanooga Baptist Church, have expressed a desire to organize themselves into a church. Reverend J.B. Howard was called as the first pastor of the Union Valley Baptist Church. Preaching services were to be held once each month at the school. The first 2 deacons ordained were J.O. Welch and Jess Cornelius. The membership grew to 52 before Brother Howard resigned in 1932. After Reverend Howard resigned, there followed a series of brief pastorates. In 1943, a building fund was established. The church set aside every 5th Sunday as a building fund day and tried to raise $100 every 3 months. Several offered to donate the building site. The church accepted the present site from Jim Ed Griffin. The ground for the new building was broken in July 1947. Jess Smith of Lawton was given a contract for laying the stone walls, while the church membership and others in the community did all the other labor. 26 men turned out the first day to run concrete for the foundation in less than 10 hours, using a box for a concrete mixer and water from a nearby well that completed the foundation. On August 4th, 1948, a Wednesday night, the first service was held in the Rock Auditorium we now occupy. The pulpit and benches were borrowed from Calvary Baptist Church in Lawton for a revival which began August 8th of 1948. It was led by Carol Jackson of Temple. Several of the workmen were saved. The church voted to become a full-time church. In September of 1958, Aubrey Ritter, then 19 years old, was called as pastor and served until October of 1960 when he left to go to Geronimo. On August 25th, 1963, Reverend Aubrey Ritter was called as pastor a second time. In 1974, the present educational building was added, called the Friendship Building. In 2007, the kitchen and fellowship hall that we saw today was added. God has blessed the Union Valley Baptist Church since 1928. Many have come to know the Lord better and has been saved through the ministry of the Union Valley Baptist Church. Thank you, Aubrey and Jane.
I'm getting my heads up in the back too. Anderson's come up and sang. All the family acquainted with the Andersons come up and sing. I heard somebody over to the side say.
This is kind of impromptu. I hope it don't sound as bad as it looks. But anyhow, we're gonna start out with "This world is not my home. I'm just passing through."
My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the moon. The
down and get us started. There is food on my table, and shoes on my feet. There's good roof above me, and a good place to sleep. You gave me your love, Lord, and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. As the world looks upon me as I struggle along, and they say I'm unworthy, but they are so wrong. In my heart, there's a roof up above me, I've a good place to sleep. There's food on my table, and shoes on my feet. You gave me your love, Lord, and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me.
I think the next item up is a time for y'all to say testimony. But we have a author and a poet amongst us. Woo. I guess that potato was too heavy. Anyway, there's the roast coming back. Jimmy Griffin, come up here and give us a poem.
I'm glad to be here. I hope you are. You know, in fact, I'm glad to be in here. But it's wonderful to see this many people together here today for this occasion. And I've written a poem that I want to dedicate to Brother Ritter. And I'll share it with you now. It's entitled Preacher Man. I've truly known this man for a cool 50 years. I have seen him laugh and also shed some tears. I have heard him preach about 5,000 times. I've not heard him repeat exactly the same line. He gets his message across in a very special way. 30 minutes at the most, and then we have to pray. I know that he was God sent, and he ain't no fluke. If you don't believe me, just read the book of Luke. He never seems to falter or lose his chain of thought. I can't find anything if he has a fault. Lord, I want to thank you for sending them our way. And we'll be oh so thankful until the judgment day.
Anybody else have a word of testimony? This is your time. Go right, come here, right back, Mike.
Delighted to be with you today. I'm the Director of Missions for Comanche and Cotton Baptist Association, which means I have 54 Southern Baptist churches and all those folks to look after, trying to answer questions and give proper guidance. In the course of doing that, I myself need some guidance. Arbuary Ritter has been that source of guidance and counsel and wisdom for me. I regret that I did not get to know him when I first became Director of Missions. Before he retired, I thought he was too busy. Mistakenly, I thought I need not interfere with his time on the job, and so I didn't pursue a relationship with him until after he retired. And then I realized what a loss it was to me, because he's become one of my closest friends. I cut firewood off his property. I'm comfortable in his living room. When I go to see him, I give up a full day because I never know when I'm going to get home again. I realize when I get in the truck with him or the car, we may go anywhere on the face of the earth, mostly all around Stevens County. I have seen where he pastored and preached in one of his first churches. One of the most moving experiences I ever had was when we rambled around and drove around the lake, and I don't know where all, and I'm not sure God kept up with us that day, but Aubrey knew we were going. We wound up over in Marlow. He pulled his pickup over to the side of the road and turned around and kind of pointed perpendicular across the highway to a little white church called East Side, isn't that right? East Side Baptist Church. And he said, "You see that little white house over there?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "That's where I was born." He said, "You see that little white church house right over there?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "That's where I was born again." One of the most moving experiences I've ever had. Aubrey is the kind of guy who can pastor a church for 50 years. Trust me, as the Director of Missions of 15 and a half years, I can tell you very few of our pastors can succeed at pastoring a church that long. I asked Aubrey one day, I said, "How is it that you can pastor a church for 50 years? And you know what he said, deflecting the credit from himself? He said, "It's all about the church." And I will tell you, it not only takes a man of excellent character to pastor a church for 50 years, it takes an excellent church to allow a man to be human, to guide, love, and pastor that church for that length of time. And I said, "Well, tell me what you preached on all through those years." He said, "I will tell you that the key to staying a place for 50 years is to preach on love a lot. I just preach and preach and preach and teach our people how to love." Now, I was talking to Jane one day, and I said, "Jane, how did you survive 50 years of his ministry at Union Valley?" She said, "I go to the nursery a lot." Aubrey is not only my personal friend, Aubrey is a friend of the association. We're an organization of total of 54 churches. Aubrey serves currently on the Personnel Committee and the Budget Committee, two of the most important committees in the entire association. He's also a member of the Revisioning Task Force, which is bringing in some significant recommendations of change and advancement to the association a week from Monday. He's the kind of man I wanted on that committee. We have some very young pastors who don't have deep roots, but I knew that with Aubrey Ritter on that Revisioning Task Force, we would never be allowed to waver far from who we are as Southern Baptists. I want to tell you guys, as a Director of Missions and working with pastors all over the country, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of pastors and staff members who don't have a clue who they are as Southern Baptists. They just know they're born again and they want to preach and they want a salary. And sometimes they're ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I just want to pull what little hair out I have left. But I am always reassured and comforted when I know Aubrey Ritter is in the group and has a place and a platform to have a say, because we're safe with him there. I want to say congratulations to Aubrey, but I also want to say congratulations to you. A church that maintains a happy posture every time I walk in this place. And I'm pleased to be here as often as I can get here. People ask me, "Why don't you come to our church? Why don't you come to our church?" Because I can only be in one place at a time. I preached at Letitia this morning. I announced I'm out of here as soon as the invitation is over. I made a beeline for Union Valley. And I'm delighted every time I walk in this place, I see happy, smiling faces. I hear the sound of joy. I hear the sound of a congregation that is at peace with itself at peace with its pastor, at peace with its God. And I'm so thankful because all over this association in 15 and a half years, churches that should be at peace are torn asunder by catastrophic conflict. And I'm so glad there's a church down here in Cotton County that knows how to live together, being flexible, loving, kind, and gracious. Thank God for you as well as for Aubrey Ritter. Please excuse me because I've got to get home to get ready to go back to Letitia tonight. And so I'll be going, but I wanted to say thank you to Aubrey. Congratulations to this great church.
A while ago, I walked in those doors back there, and you had a number of young people that were on folding chairs and eating. And I can look around, and some of you can smile, but I can remember when you were that age. And without the young people, and without your support of those young people, you won't need this building. You've got to nurture the young people. And so I want to congratulate you, I want to congratulate those young people for being here, because this is your future. I was in a grocery store at Burke the other day, and my wife sends me when it's hot or cold or raining. I haven't been there for rain lately. She sends me when she doesn't want to go, which is most of the time. And a young man walked up to me and he said, "Carl Dixon?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you still alive?" I said, "Yes, I'm still here." He said, "You was my principal a long, long time ago." And I said, "Well, that's wonderful." And he said, "I thought you'd be dead." And so I said, "Well, the Lord keeps me here for one reason. And that's to keep all my friends humble." And it's too bad that our speaker had to leave because he needed to hear this. Now, if I had you hold up your hands and ask how many times maybe somebody in your family was sick in the hospital and you had to call Brother Ritter, all of you could probably raise your hand. Or if there's a death in the family, how many of you called and he drops everything to be there? You could raise your hand. I could, because he buried my brother a few years ago. But I think it's time that, since I'm keeping everybody humble, now I don't have to worry about Jane. But Arbuary is a different story. I gave him a chance a while ago to slip me a little love offering, but he didn't do it. So I have to just tell it like it is. All the good things we hear, but how many of you knew that he is afraid of a chow dog? You know, the big red ones with the beautiful eyes and the purple tongue? He's scared of chow dogs. I found that out a long time ago. Another thing I found out a few years ago, we were in a hotel up on about the 50th floor, and up on top of that hotel, they had kind of like a roller coaster. All of you know what a roller coaster is. Well, this roller coaster on top of this hotel would swing out over the edge of this 50-story hotel, and you could look straight down. And I said, "Arbuary, let's just ride that thing. I'll buy the tickets." He said, "I wouldn't ride that thing if they gave me this hotel." So I don't know whether you knew about the dog. I didn't know whether you knew about height. I offered to take him one time to a canyon where they were doing bungee jumping, and he wasn't even thrilled about bungee jumping. But this is something for him to worry about. Last week I was in Oklahoma City. My cousin passed away, and I went to the service in Oklahoma City, and right after the service, another cousin asked me to go for lunch. And we were sitting in this restaurant, and I wasn't paying too much attention to people around me. A very dignified gentleman walked by, and he stopped. And he said, "I'm a clinical diagnostician." Of course, I don't know what a clinical diagnostician is, but I looked at him and I didn't say a word. And he said, "You're a Baptist preacher." And before I could answer, I told him, I said, "I'm Methodist." And he said, "I knew you was a preacher," and he kept right on walking. So I think Brother Ritter has something to worry about. Because if they think that I'm a Baptist preacher, we better all pray for him.
Anybody else? All right.
We have several descendants.
Yeah, lead us.
I just want to say a quick something. A lot of charter members of this church were family members of mine, and we just appreciate Brother Ritter so much. And my little grandsons, that makes the 6th generation of our family that he's a minister to. And he's been through us through all kinds of times, marriages, funerals, divorces. Yes, I do happen. And he's probably heard it all. And of course, he's had to put up with my mother. And, and she enjoys that, because if anyone has an idea about the church, they'll say, "Well, we ought to do this and do that." But I don't want to tell the preacher. And she said, "I will." and she does, and he takes it with a grain of salt. So, Brother Ritter, my family, the Powers, his relatives, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you. The Nichols family, some of them are here. Their mother was a charter member.
Who, of all the families that are charter members, could you raise your hands? If your family was a charter member, look around.
I mentioned earlier that my grand got her Christian start here, and I know that's the same for Risa. Her mom grew up in this area, and she was, and her sister Laura were in that video. I think she said that the VBS, the date was actually wrong because she wasn't born until 64. And it said 63, but she was the baby with the grumpy face. But we just would like to sing this song for Brother Ritter. I sang it this Sunday the other day with my mom, and Brother Ritter asked if I would sing it at church sometime, so we figured this is the perfect opportunity.
Constant friend is he.
gifts here that we'd like to present Jane and Aubrey in honor of their 50 years.
That's it.
I don't know how that works. Beautiful.
All right. I saw this came from Tipton's Jewelry at Lawton. Now, the Lord's in charge of a lot of things. And one of the things they've been advertising is if this month you buy something and it's 103 on Labor Day, you get your money back.
This too is a gift from the church, and Brother Ritter, just for you, it's covered up in horses, but there's a little meaning behind that. It's got a scripture. The title of it down here is "The Straight Path," from Matthew 7:13 through 14. Narrow's path leads to salvation, wide's path leads to destruction. And this came from the actual artist. And he makes the statement, God expects us to stand firm in our faith and to exhibit obedience regardless of what the world may think. And you two have done that. That's why you've been a success for 50 years here, and this church has too. And then also there's a second meaning to this. And if you'll notice, the majority of the herd is running in one direction, hence the wide path. And over here down the narrow path are just two horses, and so the second meaning behind it is a couple that actually have stood in faith together. And so as a church, we want to present that to you. And then, we're not finished. We also have put together a memory book, and whoever put the video together, I got a good idea, but Jason and Marcy are pointing at each other, so let's give them another chance. It really represented, I thought, your 50 years pretty well, and it was fun seeing some of our parents and grandparents. And you know, Brother Ritter, you know this, but Cole led our music for a couple of years, and actually his great-grandpa was one of your music leaders right here at Union Valley Baptist. That means a lot. Clint Abbey. And then to see my mother being baptized by you in 1958, I thought I was going to tear up and wasn't even going to be able to present it. So we're proud of the part that y'all played in our family. But this is a memory book from the church. We've written letters to the two of you and different things. There's photos, letters. Thank you.
mother's dream of her little girl. And my face may not grace the mind of everyone in the world, but that's alright as long as I can have one wish I pray. When people look inside my life, I wanna hear them say, she's got her father's eyes, her father's eyes. Eyes that find the good in things when good is not around. Eyes that find a source of help when help just can't be found. Eyes full of compassion, feeling every pain, knowing what you're going through and feeling it the same. Just like my father's eyes, father's eyes, my father's eyes. Oh, just like my father's eyes. And on that day when we shall pay for all the deeds we have done, good and bad, they'll all be had and seen by everyone. And when you're called to stand and say just what you saw in me, more than anything on earth, I want your words to be, she had her father's eyes, her father's eyes, eyes that found the good in things when good was not around, eyes that found a source of help when help just couldn't be found, eyes full of compassion, feeling every pain, knowing what you're going through and feeling it the same. Just like my father's eyes, father's eyes, my father's eyes, just like my father's eyes, father's eyes, my father's eyes, just like my father's eyes.
I imagine most of you know that's my daughter. Baptist Church in Lawton, and these are guys that mean a lot to me. They're cousins, and several years ago, Jackie got down around Ardmore somewhere and got into electricity on the pole. Cost him an arm and a leg, but he loves the Lord and is a great guy, and he married real well, and their son is gonna play for him. I love to hear him sing, and come up here, you guys.
Before dinner there that they
there was something I wanted to tell him from the immediate family. That's we're proud of him. Anybody stayed at a church for 50 years, that's an accomplishment, folks. I promise you. And he's been an inspiration to us for a long time.
There's a light in the window, the table spread in splendor. Someone standing by the open door. I can see a crystal river, so I must be near forever. Lord, I've never been this homesick before. See the bright light shine, it's just about on time. I can see my Father standing at the door. This world's been a wilderness, I'm ready for deliverance. Lord, I've never been this homesick before. I can see the family gathered, sweet faces all familiar. No one's old or feeble anymore. This lonesome heart is crying, they will spread like wings for flying. Lord, I've never been this homesick before. See the bright light shine, it's just about on time. I can see my Father standing at the door. This world's been a wilderness, I'm ready for deliverance. Lord, I've never been this homesick before. Lord, I've never been this homesick before.
Let me briefly close by telling you this. You know, I don't know what, 50 years is probably not a record, but it's a little better than average. About 47 years. But Quanah was my neighbor for 40 some odd years, first house south there at the church. Wonderful, dear friend. He probably explained it better than everybody else. But, you know, the way people with preachers ask all the time, well, how long you been there? Well, I tell them, you know, I've been there 40 years or whatever it was at the time, 45 years. Gosh, how in the world, you know? And they used to ask one, say, how have y'all kept a preacher that long? He always told them, we never did want a preacher anyway, and he's nearest nothing we ever found. That probably explains it best of all. And I thank you so very much for being here today. This really means a lot to me, and it's more about the church than it is me. I'm very much a human being, and I've been a pastor to humans. I've made some mistakes, I've messed up, I've disappointed myself sometimes. I've done some dumb things, but you've overlooked that, and I appreciate your prayers and your encouragement through the years, and I thank you so very much, very humbly from the bottom of my heart for that. Hey, it's been my joy and my pleasure, and I'm glad God let me raise my kids here, because there's, you know, this is a true theological statement. God lives straight up from Cookietown. And I've never talked to anybody who's lived here at Cookietown that wasn't proud of it and didn't think it was a good experience. Never have talked to a single person. It just, this is home. And I'm glad I was able to make this home. I came down here in the first place to Cookietown for the dough. Y'all catch that? My salary was $50 a week, and I got $55 if I was the church janitor. When are y'all gonna give me a raise? The years have passed, and it just doesn't seem like it's possible. Because I've been here longer than I've been alive. And I don't know, I can't figure it out. I got kids older than I am. But it's just been such a blessing for me, and I thank you for, I don't know, folks here will celebrate anything with a dinner. That's what it amounts to. And I thank you for coming today. And as I review in my own mind and heart the years that have passed, it occurred to me, and Jason, I'm glad that you didn't let Philip help with that video. Philip is the local funeral director. You kind of get that eerie feeling, when we're going to put a video up. But folks, I want to tell you this, the richest place in the world is not in the oil fields of Saudi Arabia. It's not in the gold mines of South Africa. It's not in the uranium mines in Ecuador. The richest place in the world. You drive by a lot of times, it's a cemetery. I reflect so often, and gosh, I don't know how many funerals I've done through the years. I buried about everybody that was here in this church when they called me. And I'll tell you, I reflect back and I think about the fact of how much is buried when we bury somebody. Friendship, love, knowledge, experience. The cemetery is such a rich place. And I appreciate you being here today. And maybe in spirit, there's a lot of people here who have, I've shared life with, who have encouraged and blessed mine and James' heart. And we thank you for just letting us hang around. And if you don't stay somewhere 50 years, that's all you have to do is just stay. And I do thank you from the very bottom of my heart.
Cade, I seen that picture of that catfish. Has he seen that? Need to show that to him. Tell him we need to figure out how we can do that when him and go fishing and put it on that pond. He'll like that. I ain't even got to go since him and me went and we killed him. We caught catfish that big. Him and me. I let him reel them on most of them in. I got that pontoon boat. We had cut perch. That's what we caught them on. And he just went nuts. We quit fishing. My ice chest was full. I had one of them 48 quart Coleman's.
Oh my goodness.
I got a 100 quart one now. I'm gonna make sure I don't have it again. But I ain't got to go. I seen that fish. I said, I need to get y'all to show that to him.
Yeah.
And tell him that I said
it
we
at
need him and me can figure out how to put that on a pontoon boat that we caught. He'll like that.
I almost started crying on your mom. I held my hand up here when I see it. Just get through that.
Hey, I was crying. Y'all take care. Thank you too.
All right. You did call the CD already, didn't you?
Sean has it.
Y'all did a good job. Everything was so nice. Y'all worked hard on this. I appreciate it. I skipped out there. Hey, you'll be here for the next one. You think we'll all be here?
All right, I'm gonna go help in the kitchen.
Well, am I just leaving then?
You want to go have some punch and cake? Okay, sit
Think
down.
there's any left?
Yeah.
I'll head that way.